Thank you very much for coming. Yes, my name is Roman, and I work at Axelos as a ITSM Portfolio Development Manager, and my main responsibility is ITIL and ITIL Update, which is ongoing right now. And we've been listening to many inspiring presentations in these 2 days, and actually in the last 30 years, about things are constantly changing around us and introducing more and more challenges to modern IT shops, to modern businesses, to modern service desks. And in one word, all these challenges can be expressed as a change. Everything is changing, has always been, at least for the 30 years SDI exists. Everything is changing around us. And the problem is how to keep up with this change, how to cope with the change, how to stay relevant. And since, as I mentioned, I work at Axelos and my main responsibility is ITIL, obviously the answer is ITIL. This is one part of the story. The other part, ITIL is changing. To keep up with the industry change, ITIL is changing. And actually, by changing, by being developed, ITIL also adds to everyone's plate of the changes to cope with. So I decided to split this presentation in 2 parts, of which part 1 is how ITIL helps organizations to keep up with industry change, and the second part is how organizations can keep up with ITIL change. So the second is more focused on ITIL Update, and the first on ITIL as it is, and as it will be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and how it can help us to survive in the changing world. And before I proceed with this first part about ITIL helping us to keep up with changes, just a very quick, considering the number of people in the room, very quick show of hands. How many of you guys are actually aware of ITIL existence, first of all? I expect, yeah, almost everyone, apart from a couple of Axelos employees. Are you ITIL certified? Less so. Do you use ITIL in your, let's say, daily work? About half of the audience. Are you aware of such thing as ITIL practitioner guidance that was published 2 years ago? Less than a half. I expected something like this. And I believe it's a shame for, most of all for us, because this is an important part of ITIL, library of ITIL guidance, and it was published 2 years ago, and still in the target, and a very target audience, more than a half is not aware of its existence yet. And at the same time, ITIL practitioner guidance offered, or is offering, the so-called 9 guiding principles. And those of you who actually read the book or maybe took the training will confirm that these 9 guiding principles are not about, they are not guiding principles of the ITIL practitioner book. They are not guiding principles even of ITIL in general. They are the guiding principles to lead any ITIL practitioner with a small p, so any ITSM, any person involved in something that has continual and improvement in its description. So if these 2 words exist, these principles can be useful. So what I will do now, I will run you through these 9 guiding principles in the context of constantly changing industry that we all live in. And the first and the maybe most important principle of this 9 is the principle of focusing on value, which sounds pretty obvious, and still we fail to do that. And in the context of dealing with industry changes, that means that no organization should actually implement new techniques, new technologies, new buzzwords, new ways of doing stuff just for the sake of changing. Change is interesting, change is inspiring, change is promising. A lot of people are selling us a lot of changes every day. And these changes may be beneficial, but not for the sake of changes, but for the sake of value for our customers. And this value is often expressed, and it's expressed in ITIL from 2007, as a combination of outcomes or benefits for our customers, risks we take and mitigate and manage, and costs we take and mitigate and manage and optimize. And this delicate balancing act of outcomes, costs, and risks actually helps us to define value for customers, to measure value for customers in these terms, and to prove that we deliver this value. And if we manage to do this, and speaking of ITIL, ITIL service strategy and ITIL CSI and ITIL practitioner guidance can provide some guidance on this in practical sense, then we have a chance to define which changes actually we really need to implement organization-wise, industry-wise. Do we really need to change the way we work now? And what are the priorities in these changes? And if we remember this value, if we focus on value in terms of outcomes, costs, and risks, we have a good chance to select what is really needed for our business, for our customers today and tomorrow. And the important aspect of thinking of value, of balancing this, is to work holistically, which is the second principle. Because everyone, you are aware of ITIL, you know what ITIL is. And ITIL is often perceived as a toolbox of 20 or 30 tools, like 26 of them are currently called processes, 4 of them are currently called functions. Not all these names are perfectly fit for the objects named, so not all the processes are actually processes, but let's leave this discussion aside for now. This is not the most important part of ITIL. I mean, naming of the things. But still something to improve, and we're working on that. But if you treat ITIL as just a toolbox with 30 tools for specific causes, for specific problems, and you can actually take what is relevant for your current problems, for your current issues, for your current pain points, and use it, it will work. It sounds perfect. Many people do this, many organizations do this, and this is called local optimization, right? So we fix what is broken now, and next day we'll fix what is broken there, and then and so on and so forth. And maybe for this rapidly changing environment we all live and work in now, this is not the best approach. And probably the better approach would be to see the system holistically, to apply some system thinking to our ITSM environment. It can be a system suggested by ITIL, like service life cycle, transition, design transition, operation, strategy, all these models. It can be anything else, any model at all. Ideally, it should be a model that you devised for yourself based on the value delivery pipeline of your organization, based on the flow of work in your organization. And if we manage to understand the flow, if we manage to understand this flow's constraints, if we manage to remove these constraints to optimize the flow, and to apply relevant tools from the ITIL toolbox to the relevant places of the flow, then the chances that finally we will deliver that value that was mentioned in the first principles are higher than if we have this tool and occasionally fix what is broken, widely speaking. So the second principle is work holistically. This next pair of principles includes design for experience, which is maybe one of the most important things in, and the previous one was one of the most important, and the one before. So another important thing in this 9 principles set, because currently our corporate users are as close to normal, like private users of in a public space as maybe possible, and way closer than they used to be. I remember the time when every corporate system looked especially ugly, inconvenient, not fit for purpose, not fit for use either. And I know some systems that still look like that in corporate environment, just because they were designed for people that have no choice. They will use it because this is the tool that is mandatory for them. Likewise, most of ITSM tools, maybe before the last generation, the current generation is way better in this aspect. But all the tools produced, let's say, more than 5 years ago for ITSM automation, where user interface looks exactly like admin interface and implies the same level of expertise in ticking all the boxes and moving all the fields. This is like maybe, I wanted to say great, but this is actually an awful example of how you can badly design things for bad user experience. it's sad to understand that actually ITSM tools are quite often can be a worst example in this principle. But things are changing to the better, and the corporate users actually, they demand more and more user-friendliness from what we provide to them, not only in terms of tools, but also in terms of processes, interfaces. And in this, again, in modern environment, when we say design for experience, it's not only user's experience. There is no such thing as internal, purely internal IT shop anymore, right? You can't do everything on yourself. There is no such thing as fully like self-sufficient IT shop anymore. We all live in a multi-sourcing environment, and we have to deal with a lot of partners, suppliers, sub-suppliers, sub-partners, partners of the partners, etc., etc. And their experience in dealing with us is also quite important. And this contributes to our, let's say, digital identity as a company, as a partner, as a service provider. And we have to keep that in mind as well. So this becomes more and more important because this experience tells a lot more than many metrics that we can provide. And this will contribute to another principle of observing directly that we'll move in a couple of slides too. But before that, to enforce designing for experience, keep it simple. Another principle of ITIL practitioner, and actually maybe simple, clear, easy to understand, designed for experience, focused on value, you know, holistic, etc. So keep things simple, don't overcomplicate them. The most sophisticated system is definitely not what is needed for efficient flow, right? The most efficient system, maybe the simplest, the most clear system is what we expect these days. And this is another principle, and together, design for experience and keep it simple suggest us what exactly is expected from us. You know, I moved to the UK about 17, 18 months ago. I really enjoy being here. And every weekend, if I'm not traveling elsewhere on business or if I'm not in the office doing some stuff, because, you know, ITIL development requires me sometimes to be in the office on weekends, I do my best to travel across the country and to see the country. By the way, this is one of the most underwhelming tourist experience ever. But
you have to go on the solstice.
I've been there. But there are many interesting places. I'm really impressed with the way that, let's say, Britain preserves and presents its heritage. Some things can be maybe updated. You know, I still don't understand why exactly a hot and cold tub should be as far from each other as possible. But if the only way to update them is an open plan loo that we experience here, then let's keep the heritage, please. So what I'm trying to say here are things that currently work in your environment, in your system. They survived for a reason. They are there maybe because people like them, maybe because they are compliant to something, maybe just because they were there and nobody cared to replace them and it should be replaced. And it's important to tell one from the other. Don't rush to get rid of everything that you had before just because it was there before you learned the word of DevOps. It's not the valid reason. If it works, if it provides value, if it's let's say, well accepted by customers, and if users value this, keep it, present it, show it, base on it, use it as a foundation, and progress to the next levels. It doesn't mean stay there, but keep it, use it, present it nicely, and make it your proud heritage sometimes. But for what is important, what should be developed, what should be progressing forward, progress iteratively.
As I say, but that's the sort of thing we've always talked about. Adopt, adapt, and continually improve. So anyone who's been involved in ITIL, that's what we've always done. It's not something new, is it?
That's what we've always been told to do. Done is different from a company to company.
It's what you've always done, Dom, but sadly...
Yeah, that's, you know, we can have like a survey, and you will find a lot of people and a lot of companies actually implementing ITIL from the box, or doing DevOps for the sake of DevOps, doing SIAM for the sake of SIAM, just moving from X to Z because the Z is being promoted right now. Forgetting about value, forgetting about system thinking, forgetting about customers, just doing something because it was approved, because we've got budget, because it's funny to do, because it's fancy, because it's a nice, interesting tool, and for similar non-valid reason. Let's put it this way. So, and actually, yes, we've been telling that for years, but with this being said explicitly, in terms of ITIL, in ITIL ecosystem, we can emphasize that this adopt and adapt, and this progress iteratively, is not necessarily mean that ITIL is, let's say, water foolish. It never was. It never said that you should do things in a revolutionary mode with huge changes once a year. But many people perceive it this way. And we found it like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when a practitioner was being authored, that it's important to emphasize that's not the case. And again, I mentioned that I moved to the UK only 18 months ago, and most of my life I spent in my home country, which is Russia. And believe me, progressing iteratively and evolving is way better way than occasional revolution. I've seen both. So progress iteratively, make sure that you are moving, make sure that actually you are not standing still, that you're moving in the right direction. And talking of the direction, I really like this analogy of a house on a hill. You probably know it. So let's imagine we are standing under the hill, and there is a house on a hill, and we know that this is our destination. And ideally, to reach the house, we should move up and north. But there is no way up and north. It's very unlikely that there is a direct rope or any other direct link between myself and the house. And my route to the house, my way to the house, can involve like running, walking around the hill, or on the hill like a snake, or maybe climbing, or maybe making a tunnel, or something else. But as long as I know that the direction is right, that the direction of my progress is right, I still want to be there, and I'm getting closer. And I'm constantly on the way and in the right direction. The specific way of achieving that goal can be changing every day in today's environment. It can be constantly changing. And this is one of the reasons why the next principle of direct observation is so important. Because yeah, these guys, they do observe directly, despite of all these metrics, measurements, videos, cameras, photo finishes, etc. that are available now. Because when you are judging something like constantly moving, like 20 people in a changing environment, and even with the strict rules, direct observation is still the best way to judge. And we live in a similar and sometimes even more complex environment. And metrics we use, don't get me wrong, I love metrics. I wrote a book on metrics several years ago. I definitely value metrics as a tool, but like with any other tool, a fool with metrics is still what he is. And metrics we have now in our management system are metrics designed for the moment when they were designed. Not for today, not for tomorrow. Some of them are outdated, some of them are irrelevant today, because the direction has changed, because the way of achieving the house on the hill has changed. And we have to re-evaluate these metrics every time we use them, to question their validity, to question the rules we applied to them when we designed them. It's not that easy, because you want to use the data from the past, you want to use some trend analysis, and still you have to validate every time that you are still comparing alike things, which is a tricky exercise sometimes. So direct observation cannot be replaced by any sophisticated set of measurements, metrics, reporting, etc. And it includes not only observing the business situation, observing the process situation, observing the quality of the services. It includes, obviously, coming down to the front line, listening to people, or ideally, if you work in support, if you work in service desk area, the first thing I did when I hired my service desk agents many years ago, when I was a service desk head, I took them to, it was a retail company, to the shops, to the warehouses, to the actual business front line, to show them what we support, to show them what we do, to show how people suffer when something is wrong on the IT side. And I still believe it's the best way to explain to people working in IT what they do. So, direct observation. And if we plan to observe something directly, we can expect the same from people observing us. We can expect this from our management. We can expect this from our customers. We can expect that we are being observed directly. And it's a good idea to be transparent when we are being observed. To show our intentions, to show our actions, to show our results. It's a tricky exercise sometimes. It is a great step from control to trust. And if we manage to do this, if we manage to create a trustful environment with our customers, with our partners, then we have a chance to move from, let's say, traditional service management, where provider provides, consumers consume, to a partnership model, which is still called service management, but which involves some conscious co-creation of value, shared responsibility for the value creation, and actually partnership relationships between people responsible for technologies and people using the technologies for benefits of their business, which I believe is a target model for some time upcoming, for today, for tomorrow. And if we manage to do that, then the last and ninth principles from this set, which is collaborate, becomes not only important, but practically possible. Because we move from our control and report model to collaboration model. Again, with multi-sourcing, with our partners and suppliers, with multiple clients that we might have, with our internal partners within the organization we work for. And that moves us to a better business and maybe to greater value for our final customers. And this is probably the last principle I wanted to mention for the part one, which is on how ITIL can help to keep up with changes. I want to reiterate this. These principles are not only stated, but explained and provided with some practical guidance on how to follow them in ITIL practitioner publication. So it's not just a poster. If you want a poster, come over to our stand, there is one. But if you want some details, ITIL practitioner guidance is something really worth reading, and maybe, at least some people think, the most valuable part of our ITIL library. And once again, applicable for actually any set of practices guidance. Even if you don't use the 5 books of ITIL, practitioner can help. Practitioner guidance can help. And just as a hint, if you are interested in what's going on with ITIL now, what will be in ITIL in the next generation, if you want to get ready for the ITIL update which is being prepared, practitioner is the best way to get ready. Because one of the changes that we are doing now with ITIL, we do incorporate these principles into the product overall. So it's not just a one book set of principles, it's ITIL guiding principles. If you are familiar with other products of Axels like Prince2, you know that the first part of Prince2 is principles. Principles, themes, processes. So principles is something very important. If you don't like these 9, devise your own principles. But following clear principles in the changing world is very important to decide what step to do next. And this is a good set, I have to say. Part 2, ITIL is changing, introducing more challenges to everyone, more opportunities, more interesting stuff. And I have only 3 slides on this. And not surprisingly, we do follow the 9 guiding principles in our ITIL update. So I will just stop on 3 of them. And first of them, just for the sake of this presentation, is work holistically. If we consider ITIL as a guidance, as a source of knowledge, forgetting for now about certifications, training, exams, all that secondary product based on the guidance, then ITIL guidance consists of 3 important aspects. First, this is a set of practices, as I mentioned before, a toolbox. Currently 26 and 4, in future some other number. And these practices is very important part of ITIL because unlike many other frameworks, they actually include some practical, detailed recommendations on how to do stuff questions. So you will find recommendation to, let's say, prioritize incidents based on business impact in many sources of knowledge, but only few will provide you with some working tools on how exactly you can prioritize your incidents according to the business impact. Personally, I don't very much like the way which is suggested in current ITIL, but we have a great opportunity to update it. And that's what we are doing right now. We are updating these practices. So we are analyzing all these practices. We are deciding what to keep, where to start, what to change, what to amend or to change completely, what new practices are required. Because, for example, for the service desk domain, the leading or the main ways to address service desk with customers' users' issues for users in 2007 were email, phone, and personal visit. Stuff like chatbots or social media support was not mentioned there, and self-service portal was considered a cutting edge of user support. It still is in some organizations. And so new techniques actually were developed. New technologies were developed. If you think of things like artificial intelligence, it has changed every single part of ITIL lifecycle, from strategy and from analyzing demand to user support in operations. On the way, completely changing the way of testing, deploying, etc., right? So we have to address all this when we are describing new practices, and that's what we are doing right now. I'm speaking here, and other people are rewriting practices right now. The other important part is a management system, which is now presented as a life cycle. Strategy, design, transition, operation, continual improvement. And maybe this is not the best way to describe a management system for today. It lacks some important parts. It lacks integration with development. It lacks integration generally with between project program management and operational processes. It lacks a governance aspect. And this is what we want to change. This is what we are changing now. So the new way to describe the management system, the new way to help practitioners to work holistically on their IT service management will be presented as a new service management model, which can be, again, adopted, but adapted the way you like, using the practices from the new set. And finally, the how-to guidance. Not the how-to in terms of prioritizing incidents that I mentioned, but the how-to on the level of ITIL practitioner, what we now know as ITIL practitioner. This is something that should be incorporated in every single piece of the new ITIL. It shouldn't be a standalone publication. It shouldn't be like implementation guidance, but these principles and continual improvement practices should be there to help put practices and management system into the reality. And this is the scope of our update. A couple of words on the way we do it. And this moves me to the collaboration principle. Because we definitely don't want ITIL to be written by some small group of, however distinguished and recognized professionals they are, people somewhere in a basement, or maybe not in a basement, but somewhere in a penthouse, or maybe in some virtual team of a limited number of people having weekly calls. somewhere in the internet. That's not enough today. We do have this team. We have a really brilliant team of lead architects. LED stands for Lead Architects Team. It's 12 people now. It will be changing, growing for next iterations, but now it's 12 people from 7 countries. At least 4 of them are present at this conference in these 3 days. And these are the people actually making the final decisions of how new ITIL will look like. But apart from those, apart from these lead architects, we have currently up to 200 subject matter experts from practitioners community, from consultancies, from training companies, from vendors, from professional community groups like IT Service Management Forum or similar organizations, from academia, from all key stakeholders somehow interested in ITIL to be present and to be updated. And we involve these people in discussions. They act as reviewers, as co-authors. We test ideas that LUT comes up with these people. We ask them for feedback. So we actively involve about 200 people from about 30 countries. And this is the closest circle for ITIL development. But the main source of people for this circle is the public ITIL community, which is currently about 2,000 people. And this is a group that anyone can apply to join. And this is a group that is not actively involved, but if we have some concerns, if we have some questions, we can publish a survey for this group. Every month we publish a newsletter for this group, just informing these people of how things are going on. And if we need some expertise which is not present in the inner circles, then this is the first group we call for this expertise. And this is a constantly growing community of people just genuinely interested in what's going on. You can join it by just going to Axelos website and then ITIL update. So axelos.com/ITIL update and you will find it. Or just Google it. And this is the way we test our ideas and we produce new ideas. And contribution of these SMEs and this community is invaluable. And it's really created by practitioners for practitioners right now. And finally, this is the principle I started with, and I want to complete my presentation with this as well. We are really trying to focus on value. As I mentioned, the primary product of this update is a practical guidance. It will be supported with some certifications, some training, etc., but this is this way, not the other way around. We are producing available guidance, and if you adopt it, then you are interested in certification, not the other way around. So when we say customer in the ITIL development, ITIL update context, we mean practitioners using ITIL. Industries like consultancy, training industries actually basing their business on ITIL. People basing their own products on ITIL, like ITSM tool vendors or assessment methods authors, etc., etc. But first of all, this is created for practitioners helping their businesses to achieve what their businesses want to achieve. Managing IT, coping with these constant changes and new frameworks and new techniques and new demand coming every day from many, many directions. And I believe that together with all these people, we will produce something which is modern, flexible, modular, continually developing, I dare say valuable, and quite soon. And the final slide, just to summarize what I wanted to convey with this presentation. First of all, never, if you are doing it now, stop it. Never implement ITIL. Never implement any other abbreviations as well. It's just a stupid idea to implement abbreviations, implement libraries, implement books. They are not for those. So don't implement ITIL. Instead, manage IT services for customers' value. If you focus on this, you will find a good way to use ITIL. It is there to use, not to lead, not to guide you to your goal. It is something to help not to replace the brain.
Excuse me, but there's certain things, like for instance, when we talk about incident, problem and change, a lot of people traditionally have ignored problem because it's a bit hard.
Yep.
But there's certain things that to do things properly, you actually need that combination of all three process areas.
Or you don't. So we just discussed it yesterday when Stuart presented his wonderful presentation on metrics. There is no single like fit for one size fits all solution, even for basic things like incident management, even for a combination of incident and problem. And depending on the environment you work in, you can do many things with problem management that you mentioned. You can limit it to investigating incidents' root causes, and it will be fine for your organization. You can instead focus on actually analyzing the environment, looking for defects before they occur. And for some organizations, that's the best way. You can decide within problem management what to do with found errors, or you can feed all the information of that errors found to the general backlog that includes both errors found in operational environment and new requirements, and prioritize them accordingly. And all these details will change what should be done about problem and incident management.
But it's just still saying you should still do problem management no matter what bits you talk about, and how you do it. It's entirely up to you, depending on the area you investigate in and the techniques you use. So we still need all elements.
We still need some elements in some form, to some extent. It's not. It was never saying, I mean, ITIL. It was never saying that to achieve some operational excellence, you have to implement every single element of the model. It's like I have a toolbox in my cupboard, and to achieve operational excellence, I have to use all the tools in the box, preferably in the order they are put in the box, and never mix it with the tools from other boxes. It doesn't work like that. And even if I say about the working holistically principle and about implementing the system would be different for different situations, for different occasions, for different ways of managing IT in organizations. Depending on sourcing model, depending on technology environment. In modern situation, it can be the difference between, let's say, old school like hardware environment and infrastructure as a service environment. It will change practices quite dramatically. We face it every day when we are describing those practices. But just to complete the sentence, important thing about ITIL, if you don't need to change the way you work because ITIL is changing. ITIL will be evolving continually. We don't expect like huge revolutions in ITIL after this change, because we want this change to enable continual improvement of the product itself, of ITIL itself. So get ready for ITIL, which is evolving continually. And to get ready for that, just understand what you mean and apply it in a relevant way. If you need to change, ITIL will help. ITIL change is not the valid cause for changing what you do. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Roman. Obviously, we started a little bit late, so if anyone's got any other questions for Roman? No? Yes?
I have one question. What is the schedule for updating ITIL?
We definitely expect some, let's say, important releases this year. I cannot tell more just because we know, we see the house on the hill, and we are moving and in the right direction. But there are so many surprises on the hill on the way. So we have this goal of achieving the house by the end of the year. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you for coming.